current Republican playbook, there are only so many maneuvers you can turn to, especially with facts being off limits. In responding to swine flu, however, the Republican Party's chosen talking heads have opted for an oldie but a goodie. Our third story tonight, making scapegoats out of Mexicans. Swine flu has killed more than 150 people in Mexico, the country considered ground zero of this outbreak. At least 68 cases have been reported in the U.S. as of today, with a handful hospitalized and no fatalities. Republican Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann said she found it, quote, interesting that the last swine flu outbreak was in 1976 under another Democratic president, Jimmy Carter, one who took office in 1977. But Republican commentators, from the radio clowns to the respected journalists at Fixed News, have resurrected the shrewd political tactic that served them so well last year of using our loose border controls with Mexico to terrify Americans. Michelle Malkin writes, I've blogged for years about the spread of contagious diseases from around the world into the U.S. as a result of uncontrolled immigration. We've heard for years from reckless open border ideologues who continue to insist there's nothing to worry about. And we've heard for years that calling any attention to the dangers of allowing untold numbers of people to pass across our borders and through our other ports of entry without proper medical screening, as required of every legal visitor immigrant to this country, is racist. Well, yes, you are a racist. Exactly how does that apply, though, to the people who the Centers for Disease Control confirmed actually carried the swine flu from Mexico to the U.S.? A group of Catholic school students from New York City who spent spring break in Cancun. Uncontrolled Catholic immigration, open borders for private school kids are reckless? Anyway, unswayed by the facts, the Republican echo chamber tried to stir the American melting pot with its classic recipe of hate and fear.
I thought that this line, though, was very ironic this morning in one of the articles that I read about surveillance at the Mexican border. You thought that we had an immigration problem. Well, now they might actually want to prevent the sick people from crossing over the border.
Chaos in Mexico, from earthquakes to swine flu. Will it mean more illegals heading for the U.S.?
Does anybody wish maybe we could control the border just a little bit at this point?
And everybody's emailing going, the illegals are bringing it across the border. Relax.
Tonight, swine flu spreads from Mexico to the United States. Is this the latest border crisis?
The U.S. is not currently testing travelers from Mexico, but customs officials are wearing protective clothing.
Illegal aliens are carriers of the new strain of human swine avian flu from Mexico. Is this a terrorist attack?
Some, though, say the solution is to close the border.
Now, talk that we should even close the border? If this is so important, why haven't we closed the border?
There's the bioterrorism angle. What better way to sneak a virus in this country than to give it to Mexicans?
Wouldn't it be great if we had a secure border?
Wouldn't it be great if we gave sanity hearings for people who went on TV? With us now, somebody who'd pass, Margaret Carlson, political columnist for Bloomberg News and Washington editor of The Week magazine. Thanks for your time tonight, Margaret.
Good evening, Keith.
This was just a race to see which of the knee-jerk reactionaries would blame this on immigration, wasn't it?
Yeah. Those noted epidemiologists Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and Michelle Malkin have one-upped Lou Dobbs on the subject of immigration. I mean, a whole set of fresh reasons to hate people that they don't think should be in this country. I mean, there's no evidence to back up what they say. There's just none of the border people, none of the healthcare people in this country, none of the public health officials. As a matter of fact, they were complimenting Mexico. I mean, 20 million people, and they noted a small outbreak of swine flu and got the word out and started quarantining people.
In addition to
we should be grateful to Mexico.
Exactly. In addition to there being no evidence that there's anything that pertains to this issue of immigration, legal or otherwise, the whole issue as a political issue worked so poorly for the GOP last year. What is this? Sounds like they're ignoring the Earl Inspector advice. Somebody desperately thinks that winning the primary is all you need to do. What is the end game in this? There seems to be no ability to actually make this work on a national level with a political population.
Once the Republican primary was over, immigration as an issue just passed by the boards. It had no salience whatsoever. I mean, now I think they're hoping, immigration on its own might not work to motivate the base of the party. How about if we combine an epidemic with some xenophobic riots? Maybe that would do it. But you're right. I mean, there are whole swaths of the country now that aren't Republican. They're just going to be muttering to one another about swine flu brought in by Mexicans when, it's simply not the case.
And the Mexican cases seem to have started from this large essentially industrial pig farm, a U.S.-owned farm that's been generating pollution complaints from the people who live in the area. Is it likely that the Republicans are going to get all worked up over this and they're now going to demand greater regulation of agribusiness and American investments in Mexico? Is that likely?
No, I mean, Republicans are not going to learn from Arlen Specter's defection, and they're not going to learn to regulate suddenly agribusiness or any of the food safety problems that we've been having. It's not in there. The people controlling the Republican Party now are not interested in going that way. Maybe when I think we're at 21% of people identifying themselves as Republicans, maybe when we get down to 10% and there's just this teeny tiny group talking to each other, maybe some of this, this kind of rhetoric and a market for talk radio like this will diminish.
And speaking of markets, the thing to invest in right now, anything that says Whig Party on it. Margaret Carlson of Bloomberg News and The Week magazine. Thanks, Margaret.
Yeah. Thanks, Keith. Good night.
And if you think having a Secretary of Health and Human Services right now might help in responding to an outbreak of, say, swine flu, well, today you've got one. With her swearing in tonight at the Oval Office, Kathleen Sebelius is the new HHS Secretary, having resigned as governor of Kansas following today's Senate confirmation vote 65-31. The swine flu crisis created pressure to confirm Sebelius, whose nomination had been blocked by Republicans who opposed the fact that a female nominee for Health and Human Services had supported a woman's right to choose.